Hey everyone, I want to show you today how I put together an 8-foot deer fence, fencing in something like 6,000 or 7,000 square feet for just about right on $300. I found no one online showing how to make a fence in this way, and I think it's really effective and could save you guys a lot of money if you are trying to protect an area from deer. The reason that I am doing this is that I've been trying to do a kind of a permaculture food forest kind of thing around my yard. I've been working on that for about 6 or 7 years now, slowly planting trees. And what I've learned over time is that anything that I plant, even if it's poisonous to deer, needs to be protected with some sort of fence, a barrier like these chicken wire hoops, because even the poisonous plants, the deer will eat them at least once before they decide it's a bad idea. And so everything inevitably gets destroyed. So I needed to fence in a big chunk of land over on this side of my yard so that I could prepare it for planting out trees. I'm also doing some annual stuff, some annual normal gardening things in here, but mostly I've planted nitrogen fixers to improve the soil. I have used only 4 posts, one at each corner, to support this enormously tall and long fence. The reason that I can get away with such long fence runs in this setup is that the posts that are actually supporting, the weight of the fence, that's all they're doing is supporting weight. In an ordinary fence layout, you have high lateral loads on those fence posts trying to pull them over. And so in traditional fence building, a run like from this post all the way to that one about 100 feet away, you're supposed to have, for an 8-foot tall fence, at least another 4 feet of fence post buried in the ground and cemented in with about 6 bags of concrete. And you're supposed to space those posts no more than 8 feet apart. So we'd need like 12 posts at minimum between this one and that far one in order to make this a secure traditional fence, fence layout. This fence is completely supported by steel cables. On each corner, I have a cable coming off, driven into the ground with a T-post. So this does start with putting your posts into a tire and cementing them in place. Now, I got my tires for free. I'm using small lawnmower tires that I picked up from a lawnmower repair shop. And anywhere in the world, you should be able to find some sort of small equipment repair shop that has a pile of tires out back that they have to pay to get rid of anyway. And they'll be happy for you to drop by and pick some up. I probably wouldn't use full-size car tires for this because it would just take so much cement to fill them up. What I used are these tires here, which are about 18 inches in width and 10 inches in height. And they take about 1.5 80-pound bags of concrete each to fill them up. You can learn about how to cement posts into tires by looking up how to make a no-dig volleyball net. A lot of people have done it for that. It really is not difficult. The only thing that you really need to do is set a couple screws into the bottom of your post that are sticking halfway out of the wood so that the cement has something to grab onto to really hold that post in place. And you just set the tire right on the ground. The cement won't come out of the bottom. You can just fill it up by hand and wait a few days and you will have a very solid post. Now, I picked up this steel cable on Amazon. It was about $50 for 500 feet of this 1/8 inch stainless steel cable, which was enough to fence in 10,000 square feet if I wanted to, and I could easily do that with this method. But really, all you do is you take this cable, you run it over the top of your fence posts, and then you attach your fencing material like you would a shower curtain to this taut cable that is running over the posts. You have to have a good amount of space to unspool this, run it from one side of a yard all the way back again to fold it in half. I cut it in half and then I folded it over again to cut it into 4 equal pieces. And I bought a specific cutting tool that's also a crimper for the crimps that hold the ends of the cable into a loop. These loops are made to go over the stakes that will hold the cable taut and attach them into the ground. To hold the cable from slipping off of the top of the posts, I have several of these tie-down brackets that are made for like a flatbed trailer to, secure all your loads and stuff like that inside your trailer bed. And I just have one of those installed on the top of the posts for these cables to run up and over the posts and run through that hoop so that they don't slip off the sides. The fencing is supported at the top of this cable, basically just like you would hang a shower curtain. I purchased a bunch of these little key rings on Amazon. They were $8 for 200 of them, and I used 50 on each side of this fence, threaded onto the steel cable to hang this beanpole netting from. This is just the cheapest stuff that I could find to throw together a fence like this as a proof of concept to make sure that it would work for a year or two. But you could use anything for this. You could use actual steel fencing here, chicken wire, anything of that nature, and you just hang it from the steel cable to take all of the weight, and you have a fence. I mean, you do not need to have the posts taking all that lateral load to keep the fencing tight, because you have the cables up there. You just hang the fencing from the cables, and you just need a minimal amount of tension between the posts to take the slack out. My beanpole netting here is attached to a smaller board, one on all four corners, so that I have a way to access the interior of the fence. You just pop a zip tie off the top, and it opens right up and slides back just like a shower curtain, and you have a good access point to drive a mower in here, a rototiller, anything you want. Some changes that I would make if I were to do this over again is these posts started out as 5-foot long T-posts that I cut in half. I probably would buy 7-foot T-posts and cut those in half so that I get another foot of depth, because I have very sandy soil, and I really had to pound them all the way into the ground before I felt good that they were going to actually withstand the tension on the cable. If I had another foot on those stakes, it would make a big difference. The way that I tensioned these cables is simply by hand, pulling on the cable as I simultaneously pounded the stakes into the ground. That is another thing I would change if I were to do this over. Instead, on one end of each of the cables, I would put a ratchet strap. You know, the kinds of things that you use to tie down stuff in a trailer. And I would use the ratchet strap to actually tighten the cable. And in that way, you know, you don't have to really struggle to tension the cable and pound a stake into the ground at the same time. It would make it much easier. And I think that would be a big improvement. So I may even do that. Replace the stakes with longer ones and put a ratchet strap at each corner. One other thing that's nice to know about this fence design is if you don't get your cables super tight when you actually pull them and drive the stake into the ground, you can tighten them further by pushing the posts like that. By pushing the post toward the stake, it tightens up the cable that runs over the top of it. You're taking out the slack so that that top line gets a lot tighter along the fence as the post moves closer to the stake. So that's another way to tighten the cables if you did not get them quite tight enough by pounding them into the ground and, you know, tensioning them by pull rather than using the ratchet strap method. It can be a little bit hard to keep the posts from wanting to slide back into position. So another thing that you could do is at the top where I have installed that trailer bracket, you can tie a rope to it and then run that rope down to the stake so that you're actually pulling the top of the post toward the stake. And that is a way to hold that post in place if you are having any trouble with them wanting to move inward and detension the cables. So that's pretty much it. An 8-foot deer fence with $300 worth of materials. And for that $300, man, if you just spent a couple dollars more to get those longer stakes, you could easily make this fence cover 10,000, 20,000 square feet, still just using 4 posts, one at each corner. If you really wanted to, you could take the slight, you know, U shape of the line if you did a really long run and set another post just right in the middle, just for that line to run over to lift up the little bit of sag in the middle, and you would, you know, be able to go much, much further with very little strain on the posts, which are, you know, the most expensive part of a traditional fence. No digging, no cementing stuff into holes, just cement posts into a tire and you're good to go. And if you want to move the fence, pick up the tires and drag them somewhere else and pound new stakes in, and you can move the whole thing with very little trouble. I think it's a great solution, and I'm surprised that looking it up on YouTube, I could find no one else doing it. So, hey, I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much. See you next time.